Imagine being trapped after a plane crash for 72 days, surrounded by endless snow. There were no people around, no help coming, and nothing left to eat or drink. All you could see was the shadow of your own ending closing in. But then something happened that no one ever expected. The story begins on October 13, 1972, when a rugby team was traveling from the United States for their final match. It was just a normal flight, and the players were filled with excitement. Many of them were flying for the first time, and most were leaving their home country for the first time. Some of the players were even joined by their family members who came along to support them. After takeoff, the plane headed toward Chile, passing over the Andes Mountains. Everything seemed perfect. The players were happy, enjoying the breathtaking view of the snow-covered peaks from their windows. But they had no idea that a terrifying situation was only moments away. Soon, the weather suddenly changed. A strong snowstorm hit the aircraft. The plane began shaking violently in the air. Everyone on board became frightened. One passenger tried to calm the others, explaining that turbulence is normal when flying over mountains. He said there was no danger and everything would return to normal. But instead, the shaking grew stronger. The plane swung harder from side to side. Luggage started falling everywhere inside the cabin, creating chaos. The pilots tried their best to stabilize the plane, but control began slipping from their hands. Before they could act, a massive mountain appeared right ahead. The aircraft struck the mountain and broke into two pieces. One player, along with the rear section of the plane, was thrown away into the snow and disappeared. The front half of the aircraft slid at high speed and crashed into a large block of ice. The impact was so powerful that the seats were smashed together, causing many people to lose their lives instantly. Those who survived the crash tried to gather their strength and help others. Some rushed toward the cockpit to aid the pilots, but unfortunately, both pilots had already lost their lives. It was a heartbreaking scene. There was blood everywhere and bodies were lying all around. A total of 45 people had been on board. After the crash, 18 people were gone, leaving only 27 survivors. Because the plane departed in the evening, darkness arrived quickly. The temperature outside dropped at an alarming rate. The cold became unbearable. To survive the freezing winds, they used everything they could find, including objects and even the remains of those who had passed, to block the open areas of the broken aircraft. They huddled together for warmth, trying to stay alive. Their situation was beyond desperate. They were still in deep shock, realizing that survival would not be easy. Somehow, they managed to make it through the night. When the sun rose the next morning, they discovered that 4 or 5 more people had lost their lives due to the freezing cold. But there was one good sign. The storm had ended. The weather outside looked calm again. When they stepped out of the plane, all they could see was endless white snow. They knew they had to get out of this place quickly because they could not endure these conditions for long. There were no houses, no animals, and not a single tree or plant nearby that could help them survive. First, they removed the seats from the plane to create more space for everyone to sleep inside. Then they placed the injured survivors in the sunlight so their bodies could warm up. They collected water by melting snow drop by drop. They gathered everyone's belongings, searching for anything useful. Whenever they found something necessary, they placed it in a separate suitcase. Some of the survivors moved the bodies of those who had passed away from the aircraft and covered them with ice to prevent damage. They wanted to make sure that when rescue arrived, those who had passed could be taken home properly. Once things became slightly organized, they felt a small sense of relief, but hunger soon took over. They divided each piece of the remaining food very carefully. Even though the amount was extremely small, it kept them alive. Everyone understood that the little food they had must last until they were rescued. They believed the government would already know about the crash. They trusted that rescue teams were on their way, so they waited together with hope. The place where the plane had crashed was actually a valley surrounded by high mountains, making escape extremely difficult. While everyone was talking, a plane suddenly flew above them. Seeing it, they all screamed loudly, hoping to be noticed, but their voices were lost in the wind. The aircraft was flying too high to see them. It passed right over them and disappeared into the sky. A few hours later, night arrived again. They wore extra clothes and hid inside the plane, blocking all gaps with luggage to stop the freezing air. Somehow, they made it through another night. The next morning, a man named Nando, who had been unconscious since the crash, finally woke up. His condition was extremely weak, and he struggled even to stand. Still, he crawled over to hug his sister. When he asked about his parents, he was told that his uncle and father were gone. His heart broke with grief. Meanwhile, the others once again melted snow, collected water, and drank it. They even created a large X shape on the snow, so passing planes could see them. Soon after, another aircraft appeared in the sky. They became excited and used pieces of glass to reflect sunlight, trying to grab attention. But this plane also kept flying without noticing them. Even so, they remained hopeful. They believed the pilot might have seen them and that rescue would reach them soon. Another night passed the same way, but no rescue arrived. Now they finally understood that no one was coming for them. They began thinking about how they could save themselves in this isolated place. They remembered that there were some batteries in the rear section of the aircraft. If they could bring those batteries back, they might be able to power the plane's radio and contact the outside world. Everyone agreed with the plan, but it was not easy at all. The tail of the plane had separated during the crash. No one knew where it had landed. Still, they decided to search for it. They made protective goggles from leather and pieces of glass to shield their eyes from the harsh harsh snow. 4 members went out to retrieve the batteries. But after walking a distance, they turned around and could not see their plane anywhere. Everything was covered in white snow, making the aircraft almost invisible. They realized this might be the reason no rescue team had spotted them yet. They tried to continue forward, but the ice beneath them began shifting dangerously. Terrified, they decided to go back to the plane. 6 days passed like this, and by the end of a week, all the food on the plane was finished. Snow covered everything around them. No animals, no plants, nothing that could help them survive. They had to make a choice to stay alive. With no food left, they were forced to chew on frozen pieces of meat stuck to stones, even though the taste was unbearable. They ate it only to stay alive. Nando said that if he had to consume the bodies of those who had already passed away to survive, he would do it. Everyone was shocked by his words. A strong debate began among the survivors. Some said it was better to leave this world than to do something like that. Others insisted that staying alive was more important, and those who had passed would have wanted them to survive. They tried to suppress their hunger by placing stones on their stomachs. Days went by like this, and their hunger only grew stronger. They even chewed shoelaces and cigarettes, but nothing helped. After days without proper food, their minds began to shut down. Their bodies became too weak to move. Survival seemed impossible. Nando's weak sister could not hold on any longer and passed away due to starvation. Nando had now lost his father, his uncle, and his sister. 9 days somehow passed, but their hunger reached a level where breathing itself became painful. They were only a step away from death. There was no other choice left. They agreed to eat the bodies of those who had already left this world just to keep themselves alive. The first 4 survivors stepped outside the plane and began cutting small pieces. When others noticed them eating, some changed their minds and joined them, desperate to survive. However, 5 people refused and said they would rather leave the world than consume another human being. From the next day onward, survivors carefully moved the remains and prepared small portions so others did not have to witness the painful sight. During this time, a boy named Numa found a suitcase deep under the snow. When he opened it, there was a radio inside. They turned the radio on, but there was no signal. They built a makeshift antenna and managed to listen to a news broadcast. The report said that the government had launched many rescue operations. Around 66 aircraft had been searching for them, but after failing to find any trace of the survivors, the authorities officially declared them no longer alive. So the search missions were stopped. Hearing this news, everyone lost hope. Their last bit of belief disappeared. 4 of the 5 people who previously refused to eat the remains finally agreed to do it. They now understood that no rescue was coming. If they wanted to survive, they had to take action and escape this place themselves. 3 survivors decided to search again for the tail section of the aircraft to retrieve the batteries. With the batteries, they hoped to power the radio and contact the outside world so people would know they were still alive. The 3 men set out on their journey once more. After walking for hours, they found broken pieces of the plane scattered across the snow. They also discovered the remains of the player who had been separated during the crash. They buried him respectfully and continued forward, believing the tail must be somewhere close. After hours of climbing in the freezing mountains, they became exhausted. The icy winds made breathing painful. When night came, they decided to rest under a rock for shelter. In the morning, they woke up buried under snow. Their bodies were extremely cold. One of them had ice stuck around his eyes, making it hard to see. The other 2 could barely stand. They no longer had the strength to continue the search. So they sat on a metal sheet and slid back down the mountain to the plain. When they returned without success, everyone felt heartbroken again. The last person who had refused to eat human flesh finally gave up and ate to stay alive. Then he lay down silently, completely hopeless. Days continued to pass, and they somehow survived for 17 days. But the weather turned even worse. For the last 5 days, the outside storm had become extremely dangerous. While they were all packed inside the plane to stay safe, a massive storm slammed into them and filled the cabin with snow. Many of the survivors were buried underneath. Those who were still above the snow were terrified, but they gathered their courage and dug through the snow, pulling out those trapped inside. Everyone was rescued just in time, except one girl who was buried deeper. Before they could fully recover from the shock, they heard a strange roaring noise outside. When they looked, they saw another enormous storm coming toward them. This one looked even stronger than before. The second storm struck and once again buried them all under the snow. The storm was so powerful that the entire plane was covered. Some people lost their lives instantly. Those trapped inside had no way to escape. One of the men quickly cut a hole in the top of the plane so air could enter and they wouldn't suffocate. They prayed with folded hands that no more snow would fall on them. If it did, they would be trapped forever. After a few hours, they gathered their strength. They moved 8 lifeless bodies to one corner of the aircraft. They had now survived 18 days in these mountains, and the hunger was becoming unbearable. The only way to stay alive was to consume the remains of those who had passed away. But this was extremely painful for them, because these people were their own teammates and friends. Seeing this, a boy named Numa lost control of his emotions. He became frustrated and started striking the plane's window. A piece of glass pierced his leg, causing an injury, but he still did not stop. He kept digging a hole upward through the ice. After 2 days of continuous effort, they finally managed to create an opening. One by one, they climbed out of the buried aircraft. The feeling of seeing daylight again was like being released from a prison of death. They celebrated the joy of being alive. Then they began removing the snow around the aircraft to free it. Numa noticed that the snow had numbed his leg, so he could not feel the pain anymore. He ignored the injury and continued working. The sun had now risen, which made digging easier. After a few hours of effort, the plane became visible again. The bright sunshine lifted their hope. They began thinking once again about finding the tail section of the aircraft, but the freezing nights were still a big challenge. They decided to wait a bit longer until the weather became warmer, which would make climbing easier. Soon, 34 days had passed. The weather had improved slightly. Those who first attempted the climb were still weak and not physically ready to try again. A few hours later, they received heartbreaking news. One more companion had passed away due to starvation. They buried him in the snow with heavy hearts. 2 more days passed. On the 36th day, they finally decided that if they wanted to survive, they needed to reach the batteries in the tail section. Only then could they contact the outside world. If they delayed any longer, they feared everyone would fall one by one. 4 members, Roberto, Tintin, Numa, and Nando, prepared themselves for the journey. They wore multiple layers of clothing to protect against the cold. Then they once again set out to find the plane's tail, but even after hours of walking, they could not find anything. Numa's condition began to get worse. He fainted and fell. The others realized his leg injury had become infected. They decided to take him back down, but Numa refused and insisted they continue without him. He said he would return alone. Numa made his way back to the plane, but he collapsed as soon as he reached it. When he regained consciousness later, he saw the rest of the group clearing snow from the aircraft. He wanted to help them, but his body was too weak to move. Meanwhile, the other 3 continued their difficult journey. After several hours of travel, they finally reached the area where the tail section had landed. It was completely shattered after colliding with the mountain rocks. The 3 of them felt overjoyed and headed toward the tail section of the aircraft. When they examined the area, they discovered more than just batteries. They found clothes, bottles of rum, and many cigarette packs. They returned to their shelter with the supplies. They connected the battery to the radio system and attempted to contact the outside world. But the radio did not work. Their final hope collapsed once again. Meanwhile, Noma's condition was getting worse. The infection was spreading throughout his body. The food they had earlier gathered had also finished. So, everyone started consuming the remaining meat again. Noma stopped eating and drinking to save more food for others because he knew he wouldn't survive. Some members of the group went to the tail section again, hoping to find something helpful. This time, luck supported them. They found a waterproof sheet and stitched it into a sleeping bag. Soon after, they heard a broadcast saying that after 58 days of the crash, the government would launch one final search mission. This message brought back hope and courage. Some people suggested staying there and waiting. Others argued that if they remained hidden, rescue teams might never spot them. So a few must continue the journey and call for help. That night, Noma's condition rapidly declined. He was taking his final breaths. Before passing away, he told everyone, "When I leave, let my body help you survive." With those words, Noma passed away. His final message gave everyone strength. They found a letter he had written. He mentioned that he was at peace because he was surrounded by friends, and he could not have wished for a better farewell. After reading the letter, the group felt a new wave of motivation. 3 members of the team prepared to leave again in search of rescue. They carried a sleeping bag and enough food for the journey. This time, they were determined to cross the mountains no matter what and reach Chile to bring help. They climbed continuously without losing hope. When night arrived, they rested inside the sleeping bag. The next morning, they continued moving and finally reached the peak. But the sight ahead shattered their confidence. There were more mountains stretching endlessly in front of them. That meant the journey was still very long. They considered returning because their food was not enough for 3 people. Tintin gave his share to the other 2 and turned back so they could move forward more easily. The journey was extremely difficult, but they refused to stop. After 10 days of continuous walking, their determination finally brought results. They reached a region with far less snow than before. They discovered a clear flowing river and stopped there to drink plenty of water. Suddenly, something unbelievable happened. They spotted a man on horseback on the opposite side of the river. At first, they couldn't trust their eyes. They thought it might be a dream or an illusion, but within moments, they realized he was a real human being. Their happiness exploded into excitement. They shouted for help with all their strength, but the man could not understand their voices over the loud sound of rushing water. So he threw a piece of paper and a pencil toward them. They wrote down everything that had happened to them. After reading their message, the man rushed to the authorities. The officials were stunned to learn that some of the passengers, believed to be lost for over 2 months, were still alive. The government immediately launched a rescue mission. The man brought Roberto and Nando to his home. They were given proper food for the first time in a long while. The news spread like wildfire across the city. Reporters and people gathered everywhere to hear the story. Back on the the snowy mountains, the rest of the group heard the news on their radio, their hearts filled with pure joy. They cleaned themselves up and prepared to leave. Very soon, the rescue team arrived along with Roberto and Nando. After 72 long days since the crash, they were finally saved. They returned to the city. Families embraced them with tears of happiness. The townspeople welcomed them like true heroes. All survivors were taken to the hospital for treatment. They helped each other clean up and were assigned separate beds. But even that night, they all decided to sleep together because the trauma had bonded them deeply. In the end, we learned that a total of 45 passengers had been on that aircraft. Only 16 of them survived this unbelievable journey. And with that, this powerful film based on a true story comes to a close. If this story touched your heart, if you felt the pain, the hope, and the courage of these survivors, then please support the channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing this video. Your support gives me the strength to bring more real stories like this to you. Thank you for watching, stay strong, and see you in the next video.